Warning! This podcast is likely to contain numerous instances of vulgarity and/or profanity, which some may deem inappropriate. If you're of an overly sensitive disposition, stop listening now. Additionally, the podcast will be filled with numerous spoilers throughout, so if you haven't had the opportunity to read, watch, or enjoy the story prior to the show, please do so. Before continuing with this episode of Sweet Story, Bro.
Get ready for action! 3, 2, 1, fight!
It's that time again, my friends, my story bros, and story sisters. Time yet again for me to deconstruct, rip apart, and stick back together yet another story in order to determine whether it's officially too sweet or just not sweet enough. Welcome back again. It's so good to have you join me for yet another episode of this podcast. The feedback that we're still getting, 6 episodes in now, has been pretty consistently good. Minor tweaks being made here and there as we go along in order to try and make it even better. So, of course, if you do have some thoughts, do not hesitate to tweet me, man. You can tweet me at SweetStoryBro, or you can email me as well at SweetStoryBro@iCloud.com. I'm going to do my best, like I always say, to try and get back to every single one of you. Thoughts, comments, opinions, and, integrally what you thought about the stories that I'm reviewing and deconstructing as well. I want to know those, man. Like, what if I missed a really important point in my notes that you picked up on? That could change everything. This is the sort of thing that I can't wait to hear about from yourselves. And, one way to do it, 2 ways to do it, 3 ways to do it, no less. Facebook as well. Just jump in, man. Get involved. Talk about your favorite stories, and if one of the things I reviewed is one of your favorite stories, and I gave it a mark, whether I found it officially too sweet or just not sweet enough, and you disagree with that, that's fine. These are all opinions. Why don't you tell me why you think I'm wrong? I challenge you. Go for it, man. I look forward to hearing from you. Additionally, as a further bit of housekeeping, I'd be somewhat remiss to not mention that a few weeks ago, the short story that I've sort of mentioned very briefly on here, Shell, unfortunately got rejected from the competition that I put it in for. Naturally, I'm kind of bummed out about that. And yet, at the exact same time, I feel incredibly vindicated as a writer because, hey, it's my first ever rejection, man. This is the sort of stuff I should print off and keep. So when I do get published, and hopefully, fingers crossed, temporary becomes a thing, hey, you rejected something that was related to this at one point, man. I've joined an echelon here. Just people of such high regard, authors who have been rejected time and time again. Now I'm one of them. And that feels kind of good as much as it feels bad. Bittersweet, I believe, would be the most perfect term for it. And in case you're unaware or unfamiliar with Shell, it was a short story that I wrote that exists within the same universe as Temporary. Side story completely. It can definitely stand on its own 2 feet, but it's one of those things that I tried to write where if you knew a little thing about Temporary going forward in the future, like you could read this and go, oh, yeah, that's cute. That little nod, wink, wink over there. A little tie-in. The universe exists within the same sort of time frame. Right on. That's why I was going for it. And, the podcast exists to try and help me become a better writer by deconstructing the story the way that I am. That's one of the main reasons. That, and it acts as a perfect excuse for me to read and write and play video games and watch movies and TV shows, even though I've not done a movie or TV show yet. Though it has been recommended to me by a Jack Rogers to do Broadchurch as the first one, which I may do. And if you're interested in reading a little bit more about my writing journey, how I deal with it, because don't internalize. I tend to share a little bit on the blog about how I'm feeling and stuff like that. Do check out writestevewright.com. That's where I do all of my journaling for my writing process, for what I'm doing, what's distracting me, when I'm on point, what I've achieved, when I've failed. All that stuff gets written on there. Even when it's not easy, I write about it because it matters. And hey, if nobody checks it out, that's fine. It's there for me. Ultimately, that's what I'm doing it for, is to It gives me an excuse to write on a semi-regular basis, helping me get better at writing. And it allows me to categorize my thoughts a little bit, put them into a relative order. So, yes, I got knocked back here with Shell. Yes, it does suck. Am I a writer now? Well, I have a rejection because I put a story forward. So, yeah, I'm not a wannabe anymore, man. I'm not aspiring. I'm a fucking writer. And you can read about that at writestevewright.com. But that's neither here nor there, because we are here for number 6. Uno, dos, tres, cuatro, cinco, seis. I've got my coffee, Tim Hortons from Canada, fueling this episode of the podcast. I'm just going to take a sip right now because I need the caffeine kick. I was at jiu-jitsu earlier today. It was a great session, but god damn, it kicked my ass. Absolutely kicked my ass. Worth it, though. I feel great in a ass-kicked sort of way, I guess. So whether coffee is your drink of choice, your beverage of choice, getting in that sweet, bitter caffeine, or tea or Coke or whatever, having the Coca-Cola, not the drug, of course, or an energy drink or whatever it is, sit down. Take a pew, man. Take a load off. Let's talk about story. Let's talk about what makes a good story. And how do we do that on this podcast? You guys know. We critically dissect a podcast. Not podcast. What the fuck am I talking about? We critically dissect a story. We look at its key components and we decide whether we think it's too sweet or just not sweet enough. It's not any sort of ranking system. This ain't done by 5. This ain't 5 by 5, ma'am. This ain't Faith from Buffy. This simply falls into officially too sweet or just not sweet enough. And I'm very excited for the story that we're going to be doing today because it happens to involve one of the most compelling characters in fiction. But you already know that because you've been following the Sweet Story Bro Twitter account, where, of course, we alternate because I have a job, so I can't do this every week, unfortunately. I'd love to. I mean, if you guys love what I'm doing, man, I'm putting together a website right now for it just to try and get everything in one place. And like with a lot of podcasts, there's going to be a couple options there that could give you the ability to help me make this for you. Better equipment, more podcasts, all this stuff. You know, there'll be Amazon links. So if you wanted to do some Amazon shopping, you click on the link through my website, boom, you throw a couple bucks my way, helps enormously. Also, there's a donate button on there via PayPal. You have no idea how much those donations could help. My friend Jameson from Control-Alt-Delete, he's a streamer. He does Twitch stuff. He gets tips like every time he does it, and it's helped him so much with getting better gear and all this stuff. It's the sort of thing that, you know, not right now, man, but like in the future, it would be awesome to have up and running. And hey, like I say, that stuff will help me improve the product for you and make even more if that's something that you guys wanted. So, I mean, yeah, something to think about there. But back to the main theme. You guys know who this is about because you follow the Twitter. But for the one or two that didn't and blind downloaded this without even looking at the name of the podcast, you know, of the episode, this one's on Batman. The fucking Dark Knight. Gotham's savior. Batman. But it's not just any Batman story. It's not one of the comic books. It's not The Killing Joke. It's not Death in the Family. It's not any of the major ones. Long Halloween, you know, all these things. No, what I'm doing it on is actually the third Arkham game, Arkham Knight. This obviously comes after Arkham Asylum and Arkham City. Now, I enjoyed Asylum immensely. I thought it was a really honed story, told incredibly well, and the claustrophobic atmosphere that developed by being stuck in the asylum worked perfectly in tandem with the story. City, they tried to make it a lot bigger. I think they kind of lost it a little bit, but wow. Arkham Knight, I was curious about this game. I didn't buy it straight away because of my reaction to City. But now that I've played it, what do I think? Well, you have to wait to the end to find out the result, of course. But, I mean, just a couple of things. I mean, first off, this is actually the first Arkham game to not be written by major Batman alum Paul Dini. And for those listening who don't know who Paul Dini is, he is the guy who absolutely popularized Batman during the 90s with the phenomenal animated series. I shit you not. If you want to experience a show that manages to pack emotional resonance in with psychological trauma and drama for Batman and how he deals with everything, watch the animated series. There's a lot of depth to what can otherwise be considered just a kid's show. I mean, to do that, to watch that and just be like, yeah, it's just a kid's cartoon is a disservice to what that cartoon achieved and what it was capable of. It's won so many Emmys, so many awards, and rightfully so. The art style is fantastic. Animated series is great. Definitely check it out. But to the point, this guy who's so crucial in that popularization of Batman in the 90s, especially compared to the movies, man. I mean, if you saw the movies during the 90s, Christ, apart from Returns, which I think was early 90s, but you had like Forever, Batman and Robin. Yeah. Maybe I'll rewatch it sometime just for the shock value, but like, yeah. If you've never seen those movies, man, watch it. Watch the one with Clooney, look at the nipples, and just be grateful if you are a teenager right now or in your early 20s that like your definitive Batman is the Nolan-verse Batman, because those movies are great, and by God, it couldn't be further from that in the 90s. I mean, I've actually got a quote here from Martin Lancaster, who was one of the senior scriptwriters. I believe there are 3 writers on this game, Arkham Knight. And this is actually taken from a video interview that he had with Game Informer, which you can find on YouTube. He said, end quote, "We have a small team of in-house writers now, which is a first for Rocksteady. So we have a little sort of writer's room where we can bounce ideas off of each other. We can iterate very quickly. Sefton knows the game inside out." That's the game director, game designer, Sefton Hill, I believe. Sefton knows the game inside out. He's working on it day to day with the team in the studio. So they took the reins away from Dini for whatever reason. I don't know. Maybe it was money. Maybe it was contractual. Who knows? But they thought they could keep it very in keeping with the themes of what makes Batman Batman. And that's helped because they brought on DC Comics writer Jeff Johns onto the project to help create the game's new villain, Arkham Knight, who throughout all the press for this game, they said point blank, this is a new villain, brand new, created just for the game. Now, he did appear in a series of comic books that acted as a sort of mini prequel to this shortly before the game's release in summer 2015, I believe. But in terms of writing, I'm thinking having Jeff Johns on the writer's team or just in the building help to mold the story and finesse it a little bit better in keeping with what Batman's all around about, especially a writer as prolific as Jeff Johns within the comic book industry. Some of the concepts that they take here, things like the main villain being Scarecrow and Joker coming back because, well, how does he come back? At the end of Arkham City, for those who have played it, you all saw it. For those that didn't, allow me to tell you point blank. Motherfucker died. Joker got killed. Dude got whacked. He's dead. There was that amazing scene at the end when he carries him out, having finally faced off against him. Bats carries him out, past Gordon, and yeah. Look it up on YouTube if you haven't seen it. It's a very powerful scene. Made more so, of course, if you've sunk the 15 to 30 hours into the game in the first place. But if you don't have that time, yeah, YouTube it, man. But it's a great scene. Really powerful stuff because Batman and Joker are fucking mirrors of each other in a lot of ways. It's something that's explored time and time again within the Batman mythology. And yet, I don't think I'd ever get bored of that story. If somebody said to me, Steve, we know you're a writer, so please write us something, do something with Batman, man. What villain would I go for? Well, the most obvious one is Joker. For that reason alone, I'd probably move away from that. I've always liked Clayface as a bad guy. I thought he was pretty cool. Two-Face as well, obviously. Riddler is always very compelling. but the Joker is the obvious one, and for obvious reason. But a lot of this apparently took a genesis, a kernel of an idea existed within a script for a Joel Schumacher movie, the guy who made the awful 90s movies, called Batman Unchained. Thankfully, that's the end of that link to this game. It's always interesting when trying to analyze a story that is for a game. Because just like for the people that listen to the Until Dawn review, the story was somewhat generic in that, but it worked because it was a game, because it had that interactive element that's missing when you're just a slightly more passive reader. For example, just reading a book or watching a TV show especially. This is slightly different here, because obviously it takes its inspiration. All of its roots are comic book related, and it's proud of that, as it should be. Don't go into doing a Batman game ashamed that it's Batman and not wanting it to relate to the comic books in any way. They don't do that. They didn't do that on any three of these of the Arkham trilogy, thankfully. It's very proud of the history. You can see that in the DLC content that they bring out for it, with the different costumes and things like that. I haven't messed around with that stuff. It's just the story that compels me, but it's nice to see. And there's a couple of elements that happen during the course of the game that are just wonderful throwbacks to earlier iterations of Batman. But how does this start? It starts with Jim Gordon, Commissioner Gordon. I'm going to quote, "This is how it happened. This is how the Batman died." End quote. Pretty bold words from the off, from Jim. And Gordon is the only clean cop, it seems, in a city full of corruption. The game itself, the story, should I say, actually, to correct myself, starts with the Joker's incineration. So you're inside the incinerator, looking directly at the Joker's face. The song Under My Skin playing in the background, setting the tone wonderfully, because if there's one thing the Joker was good at, it was getting under your skin, man. Getting under Bats, getting into his mind, fucking with his psyche. And what was nice about this was the onus of the burning of his body was put on you, the gamer, which as a storytelling technique was wonderful because it immediately blurs that line. Straight away, you're like, oh, the story can't continue until I burn him. And it's only after you start this process, watching the flames lick at the Joker's body. And this is really important because what the writers are trying to do here is really firmly establish, oh yeah, he's dead. Dead as a dodo. Dude's done. Absolutely. Stick a fork in him. Extra crispy. He's dead. They're not going backwards. So the question then becomes, how do they integrate the Joker into this story? Because, well, we know Mark Hamill's a part of it. We know he's there. Gaz Deves from Rocksteady had this to say on the start, and especially with the Joker dying. And this was an interesting quote. It was actually taken from a Reddit Ask Me Anything, AMA. And he says, quote, "With Batman Arkham Knight, that ending is the point that we jump off from, asking what happens when Joker is removed from Gotham and looking at the fallout from those events." End quote. Now, that ending point is the point that we jump off from. That's the ending point from Arkham City, of course, the death of the Joker. So what they're doing is essentially looking in, as they're cutting into the action as soon as they can. Years separated these games. This was the first one on the PS4, of course, but years separated them. But story-wise, it seems to happen in pretty quick succession between the end of the game and the start of this one where the Joker's body burns. It's actually set all over Halloween as well. There's a wonderful throwaway line said by one of the thugs at one point regarding how long the Halloweens felt in reference to one of the graphic novels, of course. And that's just one of the things. You're just driving around the city in the Batmobile. You can hear snippets of conversation. Sometimes it just can't help but make you smile. It just elicits a smirk of recognition. It's great. So Scarecrow is the big bad in this story. And he's developed a new toxin, a new fear toxin that causes a mass Gotham evacuation. So everybody in the city goes in order to run, which is, on a believable scale. Let's imagine a city the size of New York, upon which Gotham was initially based, the entire city evacuating, except for the troublemakers, no good nicks. And this leads to crime running rampant across the city, of course. Now, they show in a couple cutaway scenes of, I think, school buses going, packed with people, nobody able to move, as they're trying to get everybody on a regular sort of ordered system as much as they can handle. Needless to say, they do it somehow, and okay, whatever, I'll go with that. Suspend my sense of disbelief, because I am watching a dude go around in a fucking bat suit pretending to be a bat, a Batman, no less. Scarecrow goes on to threaten a chemical explosion, which would cover the entire city with this new fear gas. And this is what causes Gordon to trigger the bat signal for help from the only man in town who can do something about it. Batman. Of course, Batman. That's if you're going fucking Nolan, Christian Bale, as opposed to the people that we have here, who are lifted directly from that series I was talking about earlier. You got Kevin Conroy and Mark Hamill, the Batman and the Joker from the animated series, and in my opinion, probably one of the most definitive versions of them. Mark Hamill's Joker, people always say, what's the best version of the Joker? Do you like Ledger? Do you like Nicholson? No, man, I like Hamill. I like Luke Skywalker's fucking Joker. So Gordon triggers the bat signal for help. And Batman, of course, comes to the aid of the city, not just the GCPD, not just Gordon, but the entire city. And I've got this quote from Sefton Hill, who is, again, one of the writers and main game developers and directors of this game. And this is actually taken from an interview from a website called ibtimes.co.uk. Quote, "What we wanted to do with the story was, it's a mix of Asylum and City in a way. It's more epic. The sense of scale is huge, but at the same time, the attack is very much on Batman and what it means to be Batman. So those tones are from that personal relationship to the characters in Arkham Asylum, but with the scale much larger." End quote. Now, this is interesting because with everybody removed from the city, it allows the story writers to really focus in on exactly what he says, what it means to be Batman when you're confronted with a city being completely swept with big bads, man. We're not talking about small-time guys, although you got people like Firefly, who was in Origins, and a couple of people like that. Some dude called Pig as well, who I'm not too au fait with. But you got some heavy contenders in there. Penguin's in there. Two-Face's in there. Riddler's in there, of course. You got Scarecrow himself, the Arkham Knight, the new Arkham Knight. These are heavy hitters. All happening in one night? You got to take them all out? Yeah, okay. Good luck, Bats. Now, the only lead that they have brings us to Scarecrow's safe house in Chinatown, Gotham's Chinatown, which contains poison ivy. He has poison ivy there because she is immune to the toxin. For what reason, we don't know. It's probably the genealogy of her plant-human hybrid nature. And she's the one that reveals to Batman that the main villains have actually all come together now to take over Gotham, because with everybody gone within such an open state, the only good guys there are the GCPD, and there's only so much they can do, right? This seems like easy fucking pickings. No, not slim, everything for the taking, but easy pickings. Just take it and then divide it amongst yourselves as much as you want. It's a bad situation for them to be in. So stretched like that, let alone the fact that we all know that the Gotham City Police Department is corrupt can be. And it's an interesting idea here. And I've got another quote from Sefton Hill that directly relates to this. And it ties into his earlier quote as well about finding out what it means to be Batman. Because he's pushed. Batman, we're only at the very start of the game, but he's already getting pushed. And the question becomes, how far can Batman go? Quote, "It was about how do the other supervillains fill that power vacuum. And that was a really interesting dynamic, taking Joker out of the situation." End quote. Because remember, Joker's dead, and that's not changing. all the other bad guys come in to fill this vacuum, as he calls it, this power vacuum. Who's going to be taking control? Who's going to be the big bad? So not only are they trying to take over Gotham, but there will inevitably be a power struggle amongst them over who is the new king of crime, or queen of crime, no less. Now, we do go over to meet Oracle, Barbara Gordon, at the clock tower at one point. And this is what I was alluding to earlier. There's really nice, subtle references to everything along the Batman timeline. From the Long Halloween, as mentioned earlier, to this. And this is a really small thing, but I really liked it because I grew up watching the 66 Batman show. I'm not by any stretch, like, I didn't watch it during the 60s, but I watched it as a kid growing up. And I was a fan of the 60s show, not as much as I am of the more recent stuff, but it has its place, I think, in history as a campy, fun TV show. But there's a Shakespeare bust that has a secret in it. It's not a button, but if you were to go and activate it, it scans you to register that you are Batman. I think it's an optical scan. And that's just such a brilliant throwback to 66 Bats. Like, I can't even stress how good that is, because it's not in your face at all. For those who don't know about it, it's just a cool other high-tech thing that happens. And this happens a lot in this story. Lots of really cool little high-tech moments that, I don't know, for me, at a certain point, it did verge on breaking my sense of disbelief, because when you're building things, even if it's Wayne Tower, you got to get contractors in, and these people are putting these systems into place without ever questioning that. I don't know. I just find it a little bit weird. Like, who would build this little pod in the floor to come up and hold a bat suit? Obviously, they wouldn't know it was a bat suit, but it just seems like a weird thing to have in the middle of a boardroom or the offices of Bruce Wayne. Nobody's questioned that? Okay. That's cool, though. I mean, like I said, you suspend your sense of disbelief for superhero stories in a lot of cases. Hey, if I can believe a man can fly a la Superman, sure, okay. You know, you're a multi-millionaire, billionaire even. If you want to have little pods that come out of the floor that contain bat suits and disruptor weapons, and nobody's going to question it, fine. Okay, cool. A lot of people kind of bite their tongue when that, or don't even think about it. But that's what suspending your sense of disbelief is all about. Now, Batman figures out that Scarecrow is producing this new fear chemical in Ace Chemicals, right? Ace Chemicals, which is nearby. And this is a wonderful Joker reference, because in The Killing Joke, Ace Chemicals is where the Joker is born. That's where the whole chemical accident happens that bleaches his skin, turns his hair green, and turns his lips blood red. Bats, of course, being the world's greatest detective, goes to investigate. Gordon, he's got men there, but Batman believes that they've been bought off already, which really furthers this idea of corruption within the GCPD. You don't know who to trust. And this is something that's played throughout the story to great effect. I mean, at one point when you enter the police station, one of the guys is highlighted green, which when you see a thug that's green indicates that he works for the Riddler. Lo and behold, dude works for the Riddler, and he's standing right inside the police station. You don't know who to trust, and this is one of the major themes of this story. Who is Batman? What does it mean to be Batman? How far can Batman be pushed? And who can Batman really trust? Now, upon arrival at Ace Chemicals, we have the first interaction between Batman and the new creation, Arkham Knight. He was piloting a helicopter, incidentally, and he comes right down. He's got his guns trained on Batman, yet he tries to kill him, but his system is overridden. The question then is, who overrode the system if it wasn't Batman? Because Batman's just kind of standing there. Not chill per se, but he's like, okay, cool, he's got guns on me. What are you going to do? Because I'm the fucking Batman. The only assumption is maybe Scarecrow overrode it. I mean, and the issue here is there are multiple occasions throughout the game where Arkham Knight simply has a Batman dead to rights. And yet he doesn't take the shot. He doesn't do it for whatever reason. And Batman gets to survive for another day, or in this case, further on in the night, because the whole game is meant to take place in one night. Ridiculous. There's only so many hours in a night, of course. Batman attempts to rescue 5 captured Ace Chemical workers from Scarecrow and the Arkham Knight during the course of this little sort of setup mission. And he discovers, as he enters the compound, that they've actually amassed a small army made of many militias. And these are the guys that will obviously be some of the main antagonists as you go forward. These grunts, no names, don't matter, but a lot of them. Somehow the Arkham Knight has got the respect of everybody to follow him. Now, the only reason I really bring up the fact that there were 5 captured Ace Chemical workers, because from a game mechanic standpoint, you got to have stuff to do, so go rescue the 5 of them. Cool. Okay, whatever. But from a story standpoint, Bats is only able to rescue 2 of them. He's too late to rescue the other 3. So this is one of the most compelling things about Batman in comparison to other superheroes, like, for example, Superman or Spider-Man, is that he doesn't always save the day. And he's going to go through the rest of the night carrying the weight of those deaths on his shoulders because he wasn't there early enough, because he wasn't in a position to do something sooner. I thought that was just a really interesting character quirk to bring up because, again, it's a very subtle thing. Go save 5 workers. Oh, he's only able to save 2. But think about the emotional impact, the psychological impact that has on a person who's trying to actively save people. This ties directly into what I'm writing about with Temporary, which is a superhero novel. And it's this concept of wanting to make a difference, choosing to try as opposed to do nothing. And what if, even when you do try, you're not able to help? I think that would weigh quite heavy on you, honestly. Now, I mean, in the process of saving the workers that he is able to rescue, Batman has an up-close interaction with the Arkham Knight. He's actually in the process of saving one of them behind a glass wall, like bulletproof glass or whatever it happens to be. And the Arkham Knight lets loose with a lot of information. He seems to have a lot of prior knowledge about the Batman. Things that people shouldn't really know. He points out to the militiamen where to aim on his armor. The fact that the bat symbol is a trick. Yeah, he says that the symbol is actually heavily reinforced, one of the strongest areas on his armor. Yet a lot of people will see the bat symbol and immediately aim for it. The psychological games, go straight for it. It's a big target, yet it's the most heavily reinforced part. Remember that. That does come back later on in the story in a nice little bookending moment. It seems as though he's got history with the guy, or knows him in some way, past just research or previous experience. Now, Batman uses the remote control functionality of the Batmobile here to get out of this jam. Again, I thought this was a really clever story technique to integrate the Batmobile into it. Shows off the game mechanics whilst furthering the story. Great. Good move. And a lot of people actually had issue with the Batmobile's inclusion. Not necessarily initially, but they felt it was forced into a lot of elements of gameplay rather than organically being a part of it, much in the way that I'm describing right now. I felt that was an organic moment. You're attacked, the Batmobile's outside, you use the remote, and then you're safe because you take out the militiamen. You never kill because Batman doesn't kill. They are stun bullets or, I don't know, rubber bullets, just knock them out. And that's what they say. Even when you're zooming around Gotham and you're accidentally running into people, you always hear like this electric zzz to showcase, oh, they've been shocked. They're not dead, they're shocked. Batman doesn't kill. That's one of the major tenements of what makes Batman Batman. And it's one of the major things that separates him from Arkham Knight. I've actually got a quote in regards to the Batmobile. And it's an interesting one because I can definitely see where they're coming from here. Although a lot of people would argue that they didn't go all the way with it. And I quote, this is from Dax Jin, pretty rockin' name, Dax Jin from Rocksteady. And this is taken from an interview with Game Central, which I got via metro.co.uk. And I quote, the fantasy of driving the Batmobile is, I think, of being unstoppable, of being a wrecking ball. So the evacuation of the city and Scarecrow's chemical weapon threat is a narrative construct in order for us to achieve the gameplay objective that we're driving towards. So really, it was the decision to go for it with the Batmobile that drove a lot of technical and creative decisions. End quote. Now, this is really interesting because if you think about what he's just said and you think about the critique that's being lobbied against the game, It feels forced. There's a lot of missions that require it that probably shouldn't have it. I mean, some of the Riddler stuff, the races, the side missions for Riddler in order to save Catwoman, they can fuck right off. That definitely was just like, use the Batmobile just to use the Batmobile. But there are plenty of examples throughout the rest of the core narrative of the game where it is intrinsically and organically connected, in my opinion. Although I do find it interesting that Dax actually, pretty much says, yeah, we wanted to really incorporate the Batmobile into the game, so we designed a lot of the story elements around that. That kind of, honestly, that kind of sides with the naysayers, the people that don't like its inclusion because it feels too crammed in. Now, Batman, he tracks down Scarecrow and he attempts to destabilize the fear toxin that he's been planning on using on blanketing the entirety of Gotham. And during the process of implanting neutralizers into the mix. So, for whatever reason, you're in the core of Ace Chemicals. You've got neutralizer chemicals that you can put in order to try and control the blast. Everything's being built up here where everything's going to a critical meltdown. Batman's going to die if he doesn't get out soon, yet he still continues through. Alfred's pleading with him to get out of there. And it's at this point, during the very last neutralizer, when you pick it up and you turn around, that you come face to face with the Joker. That's right. The dead clown. The clown prince of crime. Standing there, staring you right in the face. And we smash cut to a past event. This being cinematic, of course, we smash to a past event where we learn that Batman has been keeping 4 other individuals hidden away at his Pasadena cinema studios sort of base. It's amazing how many empty buildings there are around Gotham that nobody seems to notice mass amounts of electricity going to. This just happens to be one of them. But we're actually playing as Gordon at this point, as an interesting note. There's a guy called Henry Adams, a criminal called Goliath, a criminal called Johnny Charisma, and finally a criminal called Christina Bell. And they have all been exposed to Joker blood, which has been taking control of them. Yeah, really. This is the thing that's happening in this story. You got blood in them. And for whatever reason, the blood takes over from the inside. You could see different levels of how far it's had an effect. Some of them have bleached skin. Some of them have the green hair. Johnny Charisma especially seems to just be a Joker knockoff at this point. And there's a 5th cell. There's a 5th cell there. But there's only 4 of them. And it becomes immediately obvious that this is intended for Batman himself, hence his Joker hallucinations that he's started to have. Or maybe he's been having them for a while, and this just happens to be the first time that we, as Batman, are privy to them. But that's a huge revelation, obviously. He's injected himself with the Joker blood, and this is what's happening. Joker's taking over. And we're back in the present day. Batman manages to escape Ace Chemicals' explosion as the factory is destroyed because, of course, he's fucking Batman. Joker now is firmly present in his psyche. Mark Hamill is there as the Joker, nattering away as Batman tries to do every little thing. It's a very interesting dynamic, a new dynamic duo, not Robin and Batman, but Batman and his invisible Joker. It's an interesting development. Though the whole in your blood takeover thing is completely nonsensical, and I've never been a fan of this sort of story technique. It's amazing to me that it exists in such high profile games like this, and it's obvious to me, but for any other gamers out there that are aware of Metal Gear Solid, this happens with Liquid Ocelot, where character called Ocelot loses a hand. He implants his old boss Liquid Snake's hand onto his, and then all of a sudden Liquid starts to take over the entire body to the point that his entire psyche is that of Liquid Snake, becoming Liquid Ocelot. It's fucking ridiculous. It's not a good story technique. It's not clever. It's just nonsensical, and it's nonsensical even within a Batman story. Joker blood taking over and everybody else becoming Jokers to the point that you've got yourself a city of Jokers. It's just silly. I can't buy into that. There's so much I can buy into with comic book stories. I love comic book stories, but I can't. That's just silly. and I feel the same way about Metal Gear. It's at this point, though, that Oracle is kidnapped by the Arkham Knight. That's Barbara Gordon, who, of course, Batman feels very responsible for. She's in a wheelchair, crippled because of the Joker, somebody that Batman feels responsible for. If there's one thing Batman's good at, it's making himself feel bad, which is something that I relate to. If you remember one of the early episodes, I actually say such myself. But he's kidnapped by the Arkham Knight, and this triggers a major, major relationship development between Batman and Gordon. There's a huge shift that happens here. And Batman and Gordon are one of the key cornerstone relationships that exists within Batman's DC universe. Gordon knows that he can rely on Batman. Batman knows Gordon is the only good cop in the GCPD. So what happens when that relationship fractures? It's a really interesting, dramatic concept. And I have this quote, again, from Sefton Hill, game writer and director on Arkham Knight. And this is taken from an interview with Game Informer, once again. And I quote, "Batman and Gordon have this long-standing relationship. Batman and Oracle also. And this is something that will test Batman over the course of the story. How this relationship works, the secrecy involved, the friendships that will be challenged. What impact does that have on Batman's psyche? And how can we create a more emotional and personal story in Arkham Knight?" End quote. They did it exactly right. By fracturing the established relationships, the long-established relationships, that's how you cut to the core. That's how you affect his psyche, and that's how you get that emotional and personal story. Because it's about Batman trying to maintain these untenable relationships because he's Batman. He doesn't feel that other people can get close to him because everybody that's got close to him ends up hurt in some way, which is why he feels so guilty over Barbara Gordon and her becoming wheelchair bound. Gordon is at the clock tower, and that's where Batman heads to now. And Rocksteady, of all things, this is brilliant, Rocksteady throw out a Killing Joke scene. And if you've not read Alan Moore's Killing Joke, and you are a Batman fan or a comic book fan, do yourself a favor. Go and read it. Go and get it. Go buy it. Go check out my friends at Vault Comics down in Southeast London. They'll hook you up because The Killing Joke is phenomenal. It deserves to be read, and it deserves all the accolades that it has accrued over the many, many years that it was first published. But this Killing Joke scene is where Joker first cripples Barbara. He shoots her, and it affects her spine. And Batman witnesses all of this because he's obviously tripping on the fear toxin. He's affected somehow on an innate level that's not only bringing out the Joker. There's an interesting correlation there. You know, he gets affected by the fear toxin and all of a sudden sees the Joker. This is exacerbated by the fact he's got Joker blood inside his system. So you can imagine the cocktail, that heady cocktail of danger and just insanity that must be rocking around inside his head. He then shows Gordon that Barbara is stronger than he initially thinks. And he does this by showing him that the clock tower is actually a front for Oracle's HQ. Gordon now knows that she works for Batman. And that her kidnapping can only really be attributed as Batman's fault. His little girl is gone, kidnapped by the Arkham Knight because they figured out where she was and the fact that she worked for Batman. So the thing that starts to tear them apart, of course, is family. His family is in danger now. It's Batman's fault. He has every right to hold a grudge or to want to distance himself somewhat from Batman, which is exactly what he does. Oracle manages to get away from the kidnapped vehicle by using pepper spray. Apparently she had that on her person. I don't really know. This just seemed like a convenient thing to have, a bit contrived. But she sprays it, the car goes off the road and then she gets flung out of the vehicle before Arkham Knight manages to fire a warning shot and procure her again. Batman figures all this out, by the way, by using the detective mode in the game. A neat little system where you can Sherlock a crime scene, rewinding it backwards or forwards in order to pick up on minor details to piece together the story. It's a cool addition, but it's barely used in this game compared to others. But hey, it's all right. It's better than like some of the other games really relied heavily on not that detective mode, but the core detective mode where you press up on the D-pad and everything kind of goes like UV, and you can see through walls and you can see where the bad guys are. I do remember one of my major takeaways from the early games, especially Asylum, is that you just played the game with that on. So there are so many beautiful textures to the characters, so many locations that look amazing that I wanted to enjoy, but couldn't because I was too busy just stuck on detective mode. They definitely addressed that as the games went on, though. Now, there's an interesting question and response here from Sefton Hill again, taken from an interview with Edge Magazine, but this is actually sourced from GamesRadar.com. And the interviewer asks, with the tone of Arkham Knight's writing, is different. It's more hallucinogenic and digs into the darker parts of Batman's psyche. How did you approach it? Well, we've talked slightly about how they're fraying the relationships, how the story's building up towards this concept of who can get close to Batman and why, if anybody. And Sefton provides a pretty interesting answer, which I'll give to you right now. So bear with me. It's a little long, but every part of it is very, very interesting. And I quote, "Well, I guess up front we knew where we wanted to go with the story, but obviously we have this vehicle, a way we can really delve deep into Batman's psyche and give you that kind of unique look through Batman's inner monologue. So that was something that allowed us to show his workings and allowed the writing to be darker, more emotional and expressive of what's happening behind the scenes. The core theme of the game is how Batman's allies are his strength and his weakness, and he has some really difficult dilemmas in that. I think that one thing we were really trying to do was focus the game. Because of the size of the game, I didn't want to lose that heart and soul that we had going right back to Asylum. And Batman faces some real tough dilemmas. At times he can be a real bastard, but I think we take you on that journey and you can understand why he has to make the choices that he does." End quote. Perfect quote that completely encapsulates how they're dealing with the frayed relationships that exist between Batman and his core allies. Because over the course of this game, he pushes away virtually everybody that tries to get close to him, so much so that he actually gets called out on it. And well, how does he respond to that? He pushes them away as well, because Batman is of the opinion that only he can handle it. But he thinks only he can handle it. But at the exact same time, and I think this cuts a little bit closer to the truth, he doesn't want to see anybody else get hurt because he feels so guilty. He carries that around with him every single day. Every time he sees or interacts with Barbara, he has to remember he let her down. She's in that chair because of me. What a thing to carry with you. And this is true as well of other characters going over the course of Batman's grand history. But I'm not going to mention anything just yet, because that may bury the lead, and I certainly don't want to spoil anything, And I'm just going to point out here that Man-Bat proceeds to scare the absolute shit out of me by appearing out of nowhere like an RKO at the top of a building when I was grappling to it. Just grappling happily along, trying to get across the rooftops, and there's Man-Bat staring at me, screeching right in my face. I shit myself. And from that point on, I was absolutely obsessed with getting him, which I did. I did that side mission. That was on my way towards Lucius Fox, who's hanging out at Wayne Towers, where they're able to triangulate the signal for Arkham Knight's broadcast. And, Batman tracks him down, and whilst in pursuit, ends up tracking a decoy with a modifier. Now, it's this point that we start to cross over with different characters. Nightwing gets involved. In order to carry on the story, Nightwing gets involved, and we see Penguin here as well, who's recently met with Arkham Knight. And the two descend upon a weapons cache hidden at a place called North Refrigeration that the Penguin controls in an attempt to get a clue as to where Barbara's being held. Of course, Batman interrogates the Penguin after taking care of the goons. And, Martin Lancaster, the third senior writer on Batman Arkham Knight, and this is also taken from that same video interview with Game Informer, says this, quote, "They all have their own agenda," that's the villains. "They all have their own history with Batman. Each villain has their reason, their own methodology taking down Batman. They all have the same end goal, but their ways of achieving it are unique to their characters," end quote. And yeah, you do see that over the course of the many side missions that you have to do, or are forced to do. What do I mean by that? Listen through to the end, you will find out. Penguin snitches about the Arkham Knight going to go see, and I quote here, and I'll try and do, because Nolan North of Uncharted fame, he does Nathan Drake's voice. does the voice of Penguin in a Cockney accent. So what he says is, he said he was gonna see some geezer called Simon Stagg. Hey, how was that? That wasn't too bad, was it? Geezer. Cockney. Batman heads over to Stagg Enterprises, which comprises of 2 huge airships hanging over Gotham, and it turns out that Stagg's been working with Scarecrow to mass produce the fear toxin in order to release it in one fell burst under a plan known as Cloudburst. Batman rescues Stagg, who attempted to double-cross Scarecrow. That's a smart fucking move, isn't it, Stagg? For more money. He wanted to actually sell the toxin in order to get more. Before coming face-to-face with Scarecrow himself. And more importantly, his own fears. This is a major, major dramatic turning point for Batman. Joker has popped up multiple times during the airship portion, becoming more and more present within his psyche. And when we're presented with 2 Scarecrow figures, I believe that either choice would have been the wrong choice as far as the game is concerned. You go up to the one that you think is the Scarecrow, you turn him around, and of course, it's the Joker staring him face to face. Then, on the brink of the fear toxin, Joker seemingly takes over Batman's body. You see the eyes change. They go green. And he decimates everyone in his path, leading to what could be Batman's greatest fear, becoming a killer. And he actually has a number of fears that we realize over the course of the game. And it's nice because it humanizes someone that always comes across as so badass. And by him having these fears inherent to his character, it just makes him infinitely more relatable. But the one thing that he never wants to do, which we highlighted earlier, because the Batmobile, even when careening into somebody at 80 miles per hour, doesn't kill them. It just shocks them. He can't stand the thought of becoming a killer. And yet, cajoled by the Joker, he suddenly imagines a gun in his hand, and he's pointing it straight at Scarecrow. And he pulls the trigger. Now, it's with the help of the Arkham Knight here that Scarecrow manages to escape Stagg Enterprises, sorry. With the payload in tow, basically the front of one of them, it explodes and they all escape altogether, leaving Batman just watching. And he broadcasts a taunting message, which leads Bats in rushing back to Scarecrow's Chinatown safe house, where Barbara Gordon is being kept in secure isolation. This is the same chamber that was used for Poison Ivy at the beginning of the game. Now, upon entering, Barbara is subjected to the fear toxin. It pours in within the isolation chamber that she's in. And the only thing that Batman can do is watch through the window, because in this room is Barbara, a table, and a gun. And Barbara looks at Batman through the window and freaks the fuck out. The only thing she can think to do to get away from this thing that's terrifying her, no matter how much Bats is trying to convince her, it's me, Barbara, it's me, is to pick up the gun, to put it to her head, and with fear coursing through her entire body, she takes her own life. Now, for me, and the more astute gamer, I noticed to see that gas seemed to be pouring out through the ventilation above Batman at this point. So, to me, it's highly likely that it's him who's affected by the fear toxin, not her. His fear being that he is unable to save Barbara again, and that her death would be directly because of him. Fuck. This guy's got so much baggage, man. He feels guilty for everybody he associates with, people who get hurt, and they do get hurt when they know him, and that's more guilt that he carries around. How does this guy function? It's at this point that there's a relatively contrived story element that comes back into play, maybe because he went back to the Chinatown safe house where he first picked up Poison Ivy from. But he remembers that Poison Ivy has this immunity to the fear toxin. So he heads back to the GCPD to see what they can do to neutralize the threat. Pretty straightforward stuff. Again, you can't deny the contrived nature of this. Oh yeah, I just remembered. I'm the world's greatest detective, and I just happen to remember I captured Poison Ivy at the beginning. This fear toxin payload that's been taken away for the Cloudburst project that could blanket Gotham. She has immunity, right? Yeah, okay, cool. Yeah, it's just a bit too handy. And, you know, even though the Poison Ivy does assist you, climbing into one of Gotham's oldest trees in order to do it. She becomes one with nature, because even though Gotham is obviously a high skyscrapered city, there's still nature, deep roots underneath of it, which is kind of cool. Kind of touching on this sort of like city versus nature theme, but albeit very, very briefly, certainly not to a point that it becomes a major thematic concept. He gets an incoming call from Henry Albert back at Pandessa Studios, where Bats is keeping the other 4 who were infected with the Joker blood, remember. Christina Bell has somehow figured out... Oh, I'm sorry. Harley Quinn has somehow figured out where they are and what's going on, and is attempting to free the Joker hybrids. This part of the story absolutely sucks. Okay? I'm just going to throw it out there completely. Harley's barely in it. There's no point to it whatsoever, bar one thing. One thing. The only highlight of this annoying side story are the scenes that force Batman to watch as Joker tortures Jason Todd, who, for those not in the know, is an old Robin. You got yourself Dick Grayson, who became Nightwing. You got Jason Todd. You got Tim Drake. And in other iterations, you got other Robins as well, of course. All of this immediately, just like to the point of hammering you over the head. There's no point in me. This isn't even burying the lead for a future revelation. It's so heavy-handed in how it presents it to you, but under the pretense of like reliving memories via the fear toxin, the guilt that Batman carries still with Jason Todd years later is real. And having Joker, his psyche Joker, come forth and show him what he did to Jason, torturing him for over a year. Yeah. You can just imagine that toil that plays. It must be like a torrent of emotion roiling inside Batman, you know? And yet all of this just, you know, bringing up Jason Todd at this point and showing us what happens here, even to the point where it shows him killing Jason Todd, it firmly places the concept of Jason and who he is in the reader, or in this case, the gamer's mindset. He's suddenly on the radar, and it's not discreet. There's nothing subtle about it. In fact, almost every bit of dialogue that the Arkham Knight has after this point hits you over the head. At one point he says this, and it's only the most obtuse of gamer that wouldn't be able to put these two things together. And I quote, this is the Arkham Knight, "You think you're the only one who can come back stronger, hit harder than before?" End quote. Come on, you might as well be wearing a sign at this point. The free Joker criminals are returned back to their cells after an absolute bullshit segment of the game before Batman forces Robin into the one meant for him. And this is the only other moment that exists within this entire Pandessa Studios bit, is Robin tries to convince you to go into the cell and he will take care of the rest of the night. You reverse him, you counter him, and you put him in the cell himself, trapping him, taking him off of the board completely. And why do you do that? Because you think you're the only one that can deal with it. You don't think that, not Jason, I was going to do what Batman's done before, that Tim isn't capable of it. He's pushing away the people that are closest to him, trying to help him, as the Joker blood is clearly having more and more of an effect. He's acting, as Sefton put it earlier, like an absolute bastard. He's coming across almost unlikable. And that's great. I personally find that incredibly compelling for Batman. Very interesting. The fact that he kept Boy Wonders around at all, considering his entire history of his character, Crime Alley, witnessing his parents be murdered, you know, so on and so forth. The fact that he had a Boy Wonder in the first place, that is what's out of character for Batman. Having people close to him is out of character for Batman. So to turn on these people, the ones that are trying to help him, in order to help them in his twisted justification, I found that very interesting. But again, unfortunately, you have to go through that mire of this section to get back all the released criminals. Then you take out Harley. Again, she's barely in it. Pointless. Just two really nice story elements that probably could have been integrated elsewhere in just a compelling fashion. I mean, the whole Pandessa Studio sidetracking is a completely unfortunate misstep, bar the cool use of Robin and the torture sequences of Jason, like I say. It gives an insight into that psyche like they keep talking about. And it's interesting because the other games, although they touched on it, I certainly don't think they explored Batman on a psychological level the way that the Arkham Knight does. I think that was what their intent was. At least that's what I'm getting from it, and I enjoy it. I can't lie. Now, it turns out Henry, the only person who previously showed no signs of Joker taking over, despite having the blood in him the longest, has been taken over by the Joker. Hence to Harley's knowledge, as he contacted her prior. That's how she knew where they were and what they were doing. And what he does is he flat out murders all the others with the Joker blood. He claims that they have to have the strongest. They have to purify the Joker bloodline, making it as strong as possible. And this is where it takes another interesting turn. Again, almost justifying this entire sequence. He sees the strain in Batman's eyes, the green behind the blue come through. And then he turns the gun on himself. And Henry pulls the trigger, taking him out of the game entirely, leaving only the strongest to carry forward with the Joker bloodline. Awesome. Sets Batman up as well as his credible threat. What happens if the Joker does take over, man? The Arkham Knight, he's finally found after escaping earlier, helping Scarecrow escape by the Batwing, who's been doing preliminary scans of the different islands that you get to explore in the game. And he's flanked by a militia of Cobra tanks, which suck. I hate fighting with Cobra tanks. They weren't fun. And he successfully sets off the Cloudburst, coating the entirety of Gotham in this heavy fear toxin. It looks so thick, almost like you can bounce on it. And after questioning Simon Stagg aboard his airship once more, because obviously they have that working relationship, Stagg and Scarecrow, he wants to know a little bit more about the fear toxin in general, Batman arms his car with a chemical that can protect it from the Cloudburst. Which is a thing, apparently. There's a little bit of technology that he takes out and he puts a different core in, and now he's fine. Okay, whatever. A whole bunch of protecting Ivy. This is in the story now, breaking down the game. You protect Ivy, you protect trees, and then you find roots. Again, tying into that sort of nature theme very, very, very lightly. So much so I'm hard-pressed to say it was a major theme of the game. It's long. It's not particularly engaging, though it does creep the story forward ever so slightly. It's a shame that it's just not got enough heft to it, possibly due to the flabby inclusion of Harley. I think if they were to have stripped the story back a little bit, taken out the past Pandema, whatever the fuck it's called, Pandesa Studios segment, retooled it slightly so you could still had Henry kill himself, put the Jason Todd stuff in a different place, as well as the what was the other part that I was just talking about? The torture sequence of Jason, and of course putting Robin into the cell. I think you could have retooled that story, stripped it back a little bit, and had a little bit more about the whole nature thing. Because as it stands, the story kind of just feels like it's creeping along now, which isn't good. It should be chugging along. But after lifting the bridges off of a specific island via Alfred, Batman traps the Arkham Knight with him on it because there's no escape off the island. And he's able to take out the Cloudburst tank that he's piloting, that he's controlling. He then goes to meet Ivy, who's gone quiet. The antidote she's been formulating with the trees, with the roots, are let loose via the giant fucking plants all over Gotham now. So the roots come out and they're just massive, just huge, not even trees. It's like Jack and the Beanstalk territory. It looks ridiculous. But hey, I've seen worse in comic books. So hey, I can buy into this because Poison Ivy is half plant anyway. So if you can buy into that, you can buy into giant trees breaking through the Gotham sidewalk and hanging out halfway up in the air. This is a major moment for Ivy because even though she's not had that much agency throughout the course of the story, kind of manipulated by Scarecrow, taken by Batman. Batman just leaves her in the cell and it goes back to her, asks for help. She climbs into a tree, releases the spores. All of this is because of her. Don't forget, her choice was to help Batman. She could have chosen not to. She could have made things difficult, but she chose to help the Batman. And because of the sheer need of energy that these plants need to grow as big as they do, to release the spores the way that they did, Ivy dies. Poison Ivy perishes in the process, having given up all of her strength in order to help sustain the plants as they poured the spores out, spreading them over the city. I think Alfred put it best, because he never apologized for her death. When Batman told her, he never said, "I'm sorry." He just kind of alluded like it was a noble death, essentially saying she did the right thing now, even though she didn't do the right thing on many occasions prior. And that's not unfair. Poison Ivy ultimately is still a bad guy, an eco-terrorist who, although she may want good things, looking after the world, encouraging plants, she goes about it the wrong way. I mean, one might argue that her ultimate goal is plants to take over, humanity's gone. Yeah, not so much with that, way too over one side of the bar. But she dies here in order to protect Gotham and the plants in it. And during this, the Arkham Knight goes MIA. Though, once the Arkham Knight has disappeared, Scarecrow takes the reins once more, goading Batman into facing him. Now, Gordon, during all this time, has gone off tracking Scarecrow himself in order to try and get Barbara back. So Bats returns to GCPD and does what they cannot do by hacking into the radio frequency, in order to get a location of Gordon's actual radio. Tracking that signal leads us down underneath Gotham, where we then have to tackle the Arkham Knight inside an excavator-drilled boss battle, which is fun, I guess. It's kind of annoying. It's definitely all Batmobile-related. But the boss fight ends with the Batmobile getting torn to scrap. Don't worry, we do get another one, a Mark II, which has this kind of cool silver and yellow sort of color scheme going to it. Batman eventually tracks down Arkham Knight's location, okay, before the major, obvious reveal, yes, that Arkham Knight is, in fact, Jason Todd, the guy we were talking about earlier, the Robin that was kidnapped by the Joker and tortured and branded, no less. There's a J that's been branded onto his flesh, on his cheek, which is pretty twisted. Every time he has a look in the mirror, he's going to see that and remember the time that Bruce let him down, that he didn't find him, that he didn't save him. And he's obviously the Robin that we all previously thought dead. You know, Wayne and all of his cohorts had accepted this. Jason's dead. A year of psychological torture and reconditioning by the Joker has turned Todd against everything Batman is and stands for, morphing him into the Arkham Knight, evolving him into a twisted mirror image of what Batman is, the one who's unafraid to do the one thing Batman can't do because he doesn't want to. The Arkham Knight can kill. He's done it, and he'll do it again. Now, this whole vibe of Jason Todd, we think he's dead, and he comes back, and he's actually like a big bad now as Arkham Knight, knowing the ins and outs of Batman. Man, we've seen this before. You know, there's nothing new to this story arc. The reveal itself is obvious. You can see it signposted a million miles away, and the fact that they lied, saying, the developers, that is, and the writers lied, saying that the Arkham Knight was a brand new character, very disingenuous on their part, but I can see why they did that from a marketing standpoint, to try and encourage people to buy into the game, to experience a new character that would then cross over into the comic books potentially. Most notably, where have we seen this most recently, of course, is the whole Captain America, Bucky, Winter Soldier storyline from Marvel that they did a few years ago for their movie. Now, after besting the Arkham Knight, because of course Batman does do that, he's unable to bring himself to stop Todd in any discernible way. He's unmasked, and they're looking at each other, and Batman goes on the radio to Alfred. By the time he turns back again, Jason's gone. He escapes, leaving his helmet behind. The dialogue of this is poignant and to the point. I thought is quite well written, especially Batman's final reaction. So I'm just going to read you a little bit of the script here. So I start off as Batman, and then it's Alfred, and then back to Batman. And I quote, of course, as always, "Alfred, I found Jason." "Excuse me, sir, I must have misheard you. For a moment I thought you said that you'd found Master Todd." "You heard right." "My God. Is he all right?" Batman turns to see that Jason has fled. No, he's not." End quote. I love that last line with Batman. So short, but yet so pointed, and yet it says so much over what's happened. And the real question here is, is he okay? Is Batman, is Bruce all right? I imagine the response would also be no. No, he's not. The guy he thought he let down, coupled with Barbara's becoming wheelchair bound, and of course turning against Robin, throwing him in the cage. Man, this guy's got a lot of stuff rattling around his head. You couple that with the fear toxin and the Joker blood, Christ, you can absolute clusterfuck inside his mind. He frees Gordon, and then they head up together to the top of the building in order to finally confront Scarecrow. And as they ride up the elevator to confront him, Gordon reveals that he's finally figured out who Batman is, as the game actually lifts dialogue pretty much straight from the Nolan movie. Now, I might be wrong with this. This is certainly where I heard it and immediately went, well, that's from fucking Batman, like the movies, right? If I'm wrong on this, if it appears in any other Batman history prior to this, let me know. Tweet me, Sweet Story Bro, or email me, of course. But Commissioner Gordon, and again, I quote, he says, you know, you see a lot in this job, a lot of heartbreak, a lot of suffering, but I'll never forget taking a witness statement from an 8-year-old boy who just seen his parents gunned down. Then Batman says, you were kind, Jim. Gordon, I was thinking, I may never get the chance to tell you this, to say sorry. Batman, you don't have to. And Gordon, finally, we're the same, Bruce. We'd do anything for our family. End quote. And that's kind of telling as you go up to the top of the building. They would do anything for their family, including throwing one of them into a cell in order to protect him from himself, because you arrogantly think that you're the only one that can deal with it, Bruce. Once atop the building, you confront Scarecrow. Gordon has his gun primed straight to the back of Scarecrow's head. This is it. It could easily be over. And then he turns and points it straight at Batman and fires. It turns out Barbara is obviously not dead. I was absolutely 100% right. My initial thoughts earlier that I wrote down about the gas actually affecting Batman and what he saw was his guilt coming through, his fears coming through. And Scarecrow has sworn to let her live, but only if Commissioner Gordon takes out Batman. So he takes the shot. But Scarecrow still pushes Barbara over the edge, to the dismay of Commissioner Gordon. She tells him, I'm not afraid of you. And that's the one thing he wants. Jonathan Crane, Scarecrow, obviously gets a validation of power through fear. And that's what he's hoping to elicit here. Batman, of course, swings in, saving Barbara from gravity itself as she plummets towards the ground. And having saved Oracle, Batman returns her to the GCPD, where the story now shifts back to finding and rescuing Gordon yet again. You know, her statement here, quite simply, was, I quote, I thought Dad killed you, end quote. But Batman trusts Gordon. He knew where he'd aim. And do you remember when I said earlier about what the Arkham Knight was saying in regards to his outfit? He aimed directly at the bat symbol, the strongest part of the armor. And it's awesome because just like with the other games, as the night wears on, your bat suit becomes more and more frayed and damaged over the course of many battles. And that bullet mark is there for the rest of the game, which it's just a little detail, but it's very, very awesome. The GCPD is then put under siege by Scarecrow's militia, who wants to try and end this once and for all. But with the help of Oracle and the new upgraded Batmobile, that Mark II I was telling you about, Batman's able to stop the oncoming swarms. Oracle's hacking computers and helping out like that. Once that's done, Barbara is able to get us back on track, having heard that her dad's voice was used as an activation unlock back at the Pasadena movie studios. And it's only just occurred to me that I might have been saying Pasadena as some sort of variant of that. I do apologize. It is Pasadena, although that's a weird word for me to say. Pasadena movie studios. So yeah, he activated the elevator to take him down where all the Joker blood victims are. Batman follows down and discovers that Robin's been taken. Scarecrow contacts Batman because he's the one that's obviously done that with the help of Gordon, although albeit most definitely against Gordon's will at this point. Scarecrow contacts Batman and lets him know where to find him if he wants to end this, as both Robin and Gordon remain as captives. He does have a caveat, however, and it's this, and I quote, "Prepare to take off that mask or your friends will die." End quote. It's at this point that Barbara realizes everything that Batman's done, everything Bruce has done in order to not only push everyone away, but in trying to help them by pushing them away, he's put them into greater danger. Robin wouldn't have been in this situation if he hadn't been trapped in the cell. Yet Bruce thought that was the right thing to do to take him off the game, off the board entirely. He's too important a piece to just take off like that. And it's come back to bite him on the ass, as you can see. So she chews Bruce out over Tim's kidnapping because Tim and Barbara, they're a thing. There are photos of them in the Watchtower together. They're clearly an item of some sort. And what she says, just like with Bruce's line earlier about is Jason all right, is rather pointed. And I quote, she says, "We're fighting with you, not for you." End quote. Now I have as good as a quote that kind of encapsulates her feelings on this situation. It also goes to show how misguided she is somewhat because, hey, it's Batman. You are fighting for him. You guys aren't fighting with him. You just happen to be there. You're pawns for him to use because that's the kind of person Batman is. He cares about you, yes, because he doesn't want to see you hurt and he feels guilt over what's happened to you, but ultimately, he's too smart for that. He's removed himself from that. You know, his lack of empathy extends to being willing to put people into a position of danger in order to help many, many more or stop the villains. He's done it before. He'll do it again. Because that's Batman. Batman does what Bruce can't. He makes the tough decisions. He makes the tough choices. Now, of course, Batman heads to the destination that Scarecrow provides and he's made to leave his utility belt and walk into a nearby waiting truck that's actually like in the building as well. He's then transported across Gotham before retreated to a fear toxin-induced vision of Crime Alley. What happens is, as we're in the back of the truck, it's all first-person mode, we hear the honking of another truck. Bruce comments to himself about knowing something along the lines of, like, he knew that he was being followed or how to find him. I think he's talking about Jason here, like Arkham Knight is tracking them. We get to see Crime Alley. Yet again, we get to see Bruce's his parents' death. And then we get to face the Joker in a never-ending swarm. They just stream in all over Crime Alley, and you've got to fight them off as you're being just absolutely covered, overrun by the Joker. And the fight ends as Batman is forced to do the one thing, yet again, that he never wants to do, just like earlier when he was facing against Joker Scarecrow in his mind, and the gun appears in his hand. He has to kill. And of course, this happens as he's being encouraged by Mr. J. Mr. J. The only way out of this is for him to snap the Joker's neck, just like at the very beginning of the game, where you can't continue until you press the button to incinerate the Joker into a fine crisp. The game will not continue until you snap that son of a bitch's neck. That's pretty dark territory for the story, and it's so compelling and interesting because of it. He has to become the thing he hates, perhaps even fueled by the Joker blood inside of him in order to help him get there. Now, all of this is inside his mind. Scarecrow does end up victorious at this point in time because Batman is in the back of the truck still, and he wheels him into Arkham Asylum, the disused Arkham Asylum where it all began. And what's really nice about this entire sequence, cinematic as it is that it is pretty much a shot-for-shot, if not a shot-for-shot remake of the opening sequence from Arkham Asylum when Batman trundles in Joker on a gurney. Only everything is turned here. There's some nice visuals that mimic that, obviously. At this point, Scarecrow plugs Wayne full of fear toxin, masking him for all to see. This is a live stream. Batman's helmet comes off for the first time, and now Gotham and the entire world are aware that Batman is Bruce Wayne. At this point, Uncle J takes over completely, and the game shifts perspective wonderfully into the things that the Joker is most fearful of. We get to experience the flip side of this coin. If Batman and Joker are the two sides of the same psychotic coin, we get to see the Joker's side this time. He's scared of being forgotten, despite his actions. And, of course, he's terrified of Batman. It played out wonderfully in this graveyard scene where there are statues of Batman and you go round and round and round. But here's the quote. It's Joker first, then Batman. And I quote, "What have I got to be afraid of?" And Batman says, "You're afraid of being ashes. You're afraid of being forgotten. And you will be forgotten, Joker, because of me." End quote. Fuck yeah. Awesome, awesome dialogue. Awesome comic book dialogue, awesome video game dialogue, just awesome dialogue, in my opinion. And all of this, you know, like I say, that graveyard section where, like in The Birds, one Batman becomes two becomes four, etc., until finally Batman bursts through one of the statues. And the perspective shifts once again. There's a really clever shift of character here because all of that stuff with Joker is first person. It takes a very interesting game design shift, but it works perfectly with the story. Again, this is what matters. The story elements that affect the gameplay decisions and vice versa. But the fact is, they organically work. But once that perspective is shifted once again, and we are once again Batman, he beats on the Joker, locking him into a metaphorical cage deep within his mind. Because again, don't forget, we are inside Batman's psyche right now. We see the gears of his mind turning, representative of him, you know, figuring things out. And we see him lock Joker away deep inside of himself. But what's important about this is it's not cured. It's not over. He's still there, ready to claw his way out of the recesses of Batman's mind, deep inside. He will always be affected by the Joker blood, but Wayne is seemingly strong enough to control it. Now, he could get a blood transfusion, I guess, although that's obviously not tackled within the game, but that's one way around it, I suppose. I do love the way that they tackle the greatest fears in a broad thematic way, yet manage to root it in immediately familiar territory, though. You know, we all know what's Joker scared of. He's scared of Batman. But what's he scared of? What's he really scared of? Being forgotten. Fuck, that's awesome. Despite everything he's achieved, his infamy, he's not famous, he's infamous. Yet being forgotten, and it's played out. This is a wonderful scene to play through. Some great writing within it. Some subtleties that appear throughout, like on newspapers and radio broadcasts. It's great. Again, like play through it or watch on YouTube, whatever you want to do. It's great. Scarecrow at this point becomes incredibly frustrated and perplexed by the lack of reaction from his fear toxin, and is taken aback as Batman breaks free thanks to the Arkham Knight sniper assist. He has been tracking them. He's been there the entire time. He sees what's happening, and with his sniper rifle, he shoots out, shooting a gun free from Scarecrow's hands that he was about to use on Bruce. He then fires another shot, which breaks a wrist strap free for Batman, and that's all Batman needs. With one free hand, he's able to remove himself entirely from the gurney, and now freed, Bat forces the fear toxin into Crane's own throat, causing him to freak out until he's knocked unconscious by Commissioner Gordon, finally getting his hero moment and a comeuppance on the guy that kidnapped his daughter. Now, these two, they return Crane to the GCPD as Batman is forced to accept a crime-strewn Gotham who now knows who he is. Bruce Wayne. And this is a natural ending point of sorts, if they wanted it to be. But they don't. Rocksteady instead almost throw everything away with what they then force you to do in order to experience the true story, the intended story. Honestly, the story then becomes a bit of a turgid affair of completing side quests that honestly shouldn't be made compulsory in order to achieve an ending. It feels sloppy, it feels contrived, and it feels forced. Like the Pacena Studios segment earlier with the Escape Joker inmates, this just reeks of unnecessary padding, and it feels it. It really does mire and drag out a story that could have had so much more dramatic heft had they simply structured it to lead to a natural, conclusive ending. One without the need of multiple side missions to be completed. Because, you see, you don't get to activate what's known as the Nightfall Protocol, which is the ending of the game, until you've completed X percentage of the game, which includes side missions. Stupid. Awful game design choice, and it just absolutely murders the pacing of the story. It's a train wreck. It's a horrible idea. Too long, too boring, and way too disengaging. It just kills the momentum of the entire game stone cold dead. And Sefton Hill has something to say on this, which I find very interesting. And this is taken, again, from an interview with Edge Magazine, but I sourced this from GamesRadar.com. Let's see what he has to say. And I quote, "I kind of hate the term side mission because it makes them feel like they're second-class citizens. And something we really wanted was for them to not feel like that." End quote. Sefton, you achieved so much with this game, you failed horribly on that. They are unnecessary side missions that you force people to complete in order to get a story that should have naturally built to. Your story didn't accommodate that natural build-up, or alternatively, you just wanted to pad the game out slightly. Not okay. Not good. Poor choice for everyone that sat at your table and decided, yes, let's do that. That's the way to do it. If people want to experience that world, fine. Let them do that. But if they wanted to just play for the story and get to a natural conclusion point, don't stymie what you've developed by taking that away from them. Give it to them and then give them the option to complete everything else. Because it's a great world you've created. It's a wonderful Gotham. Fun to be in, fun to fly around and stop the bad guys and things like that with some of the missions. But don't punish everybody for what only a few people would really want to do. Finally, though, once you've dragged yourself to meeting the game's unnecessary expectation, you're able to activate that Nightfall protocol I was talking about. Batman, he leaves his cowl, his helmet atop the GCPD in front of the bat symbol, symbolically, of course, before heading back to a media-frenzied Wayne Manor in the Batwing. Now, of course, as you're doing all these side missions after you've taken Scarecrow into custody, everybody is talking about the fact that Bruce Wayne is the Batman. That's kind of cool dialogue to overhear, but again, wish it could just unnecessary. He goes back to Wayne Manor, absolute flock of people outside of the media, etc., etc. And as he enters Wayne Manor and closes the door after being greeted by Alfred, the media are shocked as the entire mansion explodes right in front of them, killing Bruce Wayne and Alfred. Or so it seems, of course. Now, if you complete the game 100%, like literally every little bit, which includes the Riddler trophies, and I don't even get me started on the Riddler side quest, because I did all of that expecting not only to free Catwoman, but to have a showdown with Riddler and take him into custody before having a little bit of a fight with him, and then he disappears saying, if you want to fight me, you can collect all the Riddler trophies and then come back. I don't think so, Nigma. That's not going to happen. You can just hide under the orphanage for the rest of your life. I don't give a shit. Only at that point will you unlock the true Nightfall ending. I've not seen that yet, and I'm not going to be playing through for that because I don't feel the motivation to. I've had an ending that was taken away from me, and I finally earned that. You can't just change the goalposts like that. It's just ridiculous. There should have been a full-formed ending just because that's what the story needs. This is the final part of a trilogy, for fuck's sake. You know, you built this up and you've crafted this story over 3 games, and then at the last minute you want to move the goalposts just so that people 100% it? Come on, guys. You guys are way smarter than that. It's just an absolute handbrake on every finesse, on all the finesse that you brought to the story prior to this point. It's equally as ridiculous as forcing you to play and meet a certain percentage before being allowed to see the ending in the first place. It's a real misstep. For a story that, honestly, up until this point, has been enjoyably well-paced, if not entirely predictable, and that's the honest truth of it. And the final quote that I want to add towards this is, once again, from Sefton, and this is taken from that same video interview from Game Informer, where he has this to say. And I'll let you come to your own conclusions of how you feel about it, especially after what I've said, after you hear it. And I quote, "We had this idea for sort of how we wanted the Arkham trilogy to end, this big crescendo for the game while we were working on Arkham City, and it just felt right. This is the place it has to end." End quote. Really, this is the place where it has to end, where you have to force people to do more of your game, even if they don't want to, just to get an ending in the first place, and then you add on top of that, you have to fucking 100% it just to get a quote-unquote true ending? Ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous, you guys. Although it does bookend it quite nicely, again, with Commissioner Gordon's initial quote, the one I opened this episode with when I started diving into this story. This is how it happened. This is how the Batman died. So, with all of that in mind, the question then becomes, is this story officially too sweet or just not sweet enough? Now, as I'm sure you guys have gathered, there have been plenty over the course of this story that I absolutely adored. I loved, no less, the dramatic themes, the fear, the guilt, especially that Batman carries with him, the reappearance of Jason, how that ties into the universe, as well as playing on Batman's psyche, the fact that he pushes away those closest to him because he is selfish. He wants to do it to protect them, but he does it in the most selfish way possible. He's fallible, just like everybody else. He has his flaws, and this game really highlights that. And you couple that with the Joker's fears that play off inside of his mind, whilst inside of Bruce's mind, man, this shit gets layered. I thought they played it off quite well. I thought it was really well done, really well handled. But then you juxtapose it with some of its major issues, like the pacing problems when you go back to the studios to get the Joker blood victims. You've got the Ivy stuff, finding the roots, which, although admittedly it dragged it out from a gameplay standpoint, the story just crept along because of it. There are issues with the story. The predictability especially is a problem. But is that enough to really take away from it as a whole, especially given the wonderful, luscious environments that you have to go through? But I'm not judging it on that. I mean, yeah, ultimately this is somewhat of a review show. We focus on stories entirely, but the game looks great. It's, like I say, beautiful environments to go around. The mythology is ingrained in everything that you do. It's really good. Some of the side missions are somewhat enjoyable, fulfilling, shall I say, to go through with them. Not all of them by any stretch, but and the sense of disbelief that you have that you could accomplish all of this within one night is just insane. But the real question, like I say, what it all boils down to, man, I don't know how you feel about it, but for me, Batman, the Arkham Knight, is officially too sweet. That's going to do it for another episode of Sweet Story Bro by Bros and Sisters. Thank you so much for coming by and checking out as always. And be sure to let me know what you thought about Batman Arkham Knight. Tweet me at Sweet Story Bro or email me at sweetstorybro@icloud.com. So until next time, this is Steve Russell imploring you to go enjoy some stories. I'm out.